with the rest of the show, I would like to say Ramadan Mubarak to those who observed their first fast today, and Ramadan Mubarak to those who will be observing their first fast tomorrow. I hope Allah makes everything easy for everyone and that your prayers are accepted. Now, moving on to today's show. Some of you who follow me throughout the year already will be aware that I continue to have a show outside of Ramadan once a month on Mondays. So for those who are tuning in for the first time or returning to tuning in Ramadan, then you can play back on Spotify, YouTube and Facebook on our Ramadan radio pages. So without further ado, and as always, I like to thank everyone here at the team at Ramadan Radio for their ongoing support and efforts they put in. Without them, the show will not be possible. I'd also like to thank my guests, my listeners and my viewers, because again, without them, the show would not be possible. Now, I am smiling, and I'm smiling because since I've been doing this show, which is 2020, I have taken a very unorthodox approach in that I actually don't have a guest today in our VIP guest seat. So in our hot seats, there's no one except myself. Now, when I pitched the idea to my producer, he did look a little bit skeptical at me because, 45 minutes of me talking at the camera might just be a little bit possible. I know I can talk for England and everything, but I'm pretty sure people might just, not want to listen to me all the time. But anyway, we are going to try and make this work. So today is all about interview me. So the lines, whether that's you calling into the studio, or whether you're texting, or you are going to WhatsApp the studio, do message your question. And we will, if you're messaging it, whether that's text or WhatsApp, we will read it out and I will then go on to answer. And if you're then calling in, you will be put live through to me. We'll have a conversation and you can ask the question and I will answer it. So for those who do not know the number, I am going to play something which I absolutely love, this button. So bear with me. Right, so now that we've done housekeeping, let's carry on. So who am I? So my name is Zainab Zaeem. I'm your host and presenter of this show, Breaking Stereotypes. I am a mother. I have 3 boys and 1 girl. All my lads are in university. I do have a pair of twins, and I call them my buy one, get one frees, which they don't actually like, but it is what it is. I do like calling them that. And my youngest, who will be sitting her GCSEs next year. I am a solicitor by trade, and for my hobbies, as you probably already aware, I ride a motorbike, amongst other items. I also volunteer quite a bit, so I am a mentor for university students and graduates. That could be in their legal non-legal background, and I also like to do a lot of volunteering for charity organizations, and I am committee members, I'm a committee member of certain organizations such as Leicestershire Law Society, and I also chair the Muslim Lawyers Group, and I'm the principal chair for that organization. We're a pro bono initiative with over 150 members, and they are both qualified solicitors, barristers, and also aspiring students, and that could be barristers and solicitors as well. So I'm actually quite pleased to say we have had a few questions come in. Thank you. You have saved me from any embarrassment. Kidding aside, so let's read out the first few questions. Salams Zainab, we are your #1 fans. Jazakallah khair so much. Truly, truly appreciate that. So I have been tasked to ask you some questions from my daughter-in-law, who is newly married and is juggling work life as a GP and adjusting to a new family life. So here goes. Well, before I read the question, congratulations to your daughter-in-law, who is, working as a GP and having a new family. So congratulations on that side. And let's see if there is something I can do to help her. So the first question is, describe your day-to-day life as a lawyer. Okay, very, very good question, and one that I often get asked by various people. it really does depend upon the day. So some days can be admin side, so catching up on emails, catching up on accounts, whether that's invoicing or just tidying up cases that need to be closed and so on. Other times it could be meeting clients, attending conferences with third parties like counsel and so on. And most of the time it will be taking instructions from clients, analyzing their paperwork that they've given us, evidence and so on, finding out whether they've got any legal standing to take the case forward, and then preparing their case. So that could be hearing bundles, advocating a courtroom, or negotiating settlements with the other side, or at least attempting to. So sometimes it can be quite slow, but majority of the time it's quite busy. And there's the old age adage, as we say, the cliche, that the hours are just not enough. And this brings me really nicely onto the third question I'm going to tackle before I tackle the second question, which is, how do you juggle work-life balance? I think that's a fantastic question. One that probably everybody wonders how other people do it. And there's no hard or set rule that I tend to go by. It really does depend on the tasks that I have. What I will start off to say is I make a point of trying to go in work a little bit earlier than 9 o'clock. So my hours are 9 to 5. So I like to go in about 8:45. That allows me to just set up, grab myself, cup of coffee or a tea and so on, and just set myself up in front of the computer, turn it on and so on. That way I'm not struggling for time. Now, that does depend on traffic. I do drop my daughter off to school in the morning, so I am fighting, the traffic battle there. So sometimes I might get there close to a few minutes before 9 o'clock. But in reality, in an ideal world, I like to get there early. One point I do make doing is I leave work dot on at 5 p.m. So I switch my PC off, bang on at 5 p.m., pack up, and I'm out the door by 5 past. The only thing that stops me leaving the office at 5 is if I'm stopping to have a quick conversation with my boss or with my colleague for something that we couldn't touch upon during the day. But before 5, I'm out that door. And there's a reason for that. The reason is because we can easily get into that clog wheel of staying behind and continuously working and not putting your mind at rest with everything else that we do. But also one of the main other reasons is a lot of the volunteering I do starts at 6 o'clock. And where I work, the office, is in Melton Mowbray. So when I'm in the office, it takes me a good 40 minutes to head back into Leicester and so on. So I do make a point of leaving. In terms of juggling my work-life balance, I'm quite pedantic. So for the newer generations, you might actually not know what a file of facts is. So if you don't, I strongly suggest you Google it. But essentially, it's a paper diary. So I have a paper diary. I then have my phone diary. I then have my Outlook diary, which is our Outlook work emails. And then at home, I have a massive A3 poster on the wall where I can easily look up from my computer system and look to see what days I'm free and what days I'm busy. So I've got 4 calendars, which, sometimes it might take a little bit of time filling them all in, but it allows me to manage my time in a way where I'm not double booking myself, which can sometimes happen. In terms of actually juggling the work-life balance, you need support. You can't do it yourself, whether that's dropping your children off to daycare or pre-care, or whatever it is they call it nowadays, whether that's support system from your family members or whether that's friends. Support system is essential. Even if there's no one there to support you taking care of your family, someone being there to support you when you need a quick rant or you need to sound off something with someone else, an idea, bounce it back off someone. So these kind of supports are quite essential. Okay, so what I tend to do is I've got my phone, so something will go in my phone straight away. Then I repeat that on my paper diary. Then it goes onto my wall, and then eventually it goes into my Outlook. The wall one is the one I prefer the best because that way I can easily see what days I'm completely booked out or have a couple of hours here and there, and then where I'm actually free to organize something. One of the key things that allows me to juggle my work-life balance is my social life. all of my friends and family are fully aware that if they wanted to organize something or if they wanted me to attend something, I need as much notice as possible. And sometimes that's not, available to people. Some things do get booked in last minute. So when they do message it to me, I try my best to move things around to see who I can accommodate. And a lot of the times when I've booked something in with someone, they tend to be quite accommodating, will allow me to rearrange and cancel. So I'm not shy in saying to people, I can't actually make that because I already have something booked in. Or, yes, I can make that. Let me just arrange a few things around. So I'm quite open and honest with people. And that allows me to maintain that healthy work-life balance. But remember, it all depends upon your capacity, your friend system, and you can only do so much. So you should not put that much stress on yourself in order to make everybody happy, because you can't make everybody happy. And those who do love you, and those who do care for you, and those who do want to see you excel will support you no matter what. Yeah, okay, they might give you guidance and they might tell you what you could have done a bit better. Fine, take that on board, learn from it, move on from it. But always be open to listening to the other person if they do have feedback to give you. But yeah, I do try and arrange things in my free time. Sometimes I do double book myself, and it's just a matter about talking to people. The next question I've been asked: describe the challenges you face as a lawyer, gender, ethnicity, etc. Well, that's a very, very broad question and a very good one indeed. Being a female Muslim lawyer working predominantly in a male-dominated industry can be quite hard. But I don't only have the challenges of being a female and being Asian, or shall we say Muslim. I also have my height as being an issue. Now you're probably wondering, why would height be an issue? Well, my height is an issue because being 4'11", I am quite short, which what I lack in my height, I make up for in my tenacity, as I always say to everyone. But in reality, there's a lot of people out there, whether they're my clients, barristers, whether they're, my students and so on, they are very, very tall. And sometimes I've found that when they are hovering over me and they're having to look down on me, it sometimes can be that they are looking down. And when somebody looks down on you, they might not always take you seriously, especially if you're having to look above. And that's a stereotype in itself. So breaking that stereotype, how do I go about breaking that stereotype? Well, I'm very good at what I do. Touch wood, at least I hope so, inshallah. So far, I've not had any negative feedback, and I do get a lot of great feedback from clients, from colleagues and employers and so on. So it's about knowing your stuff, in layman's term, knowing your case inside and out, and giving adequate and professional advice, managing their expectations. One of the main challenges we face as a female lawyer is that there are not that many female lawyers who are probably in dominant roles, team leader roles, partner roles, and so on. Alhamdulillah, recently I have had a promotion. I am now a team leader, or one of 2 team leaders in my company, which is brilliant. I've been there less than a year and a half. I'm about to hit my year and a half. So it's good progression to have. It is predominantly a non-Asian company. In fact, in our whole team that we have, there's only 3 Asians. 2 of them have only just started. So I've been the only Asian for a year and a half now. So you can imagine how it's been being in that environment. And also, it's been mostly male-dominated. So the way to get by, the way to overcome that challenge is to know your stuff. If you know the law, if you're good at what you do, and you are personable, people can approach you, then those doors tend to open up. Although sometimes you might have to fight for those doors to open. So persevere, have that tenacity to continue and to move forward. And don't let anyone back you down, push you into a corner where you feel like you can't go any further. I'm going to move on from that question. What do you like best about your job as a lawyer? What do I like best about my job as a lawyer? A lot, actually. So I would not be able to pinpoint it down as to what is best. The reason being is I got into this role to help people. But ultimately, working for an employer, it's a business at the end of the day. They've got to make their income from somewhere, right? So we have to charge that back to our clients. Okay, whether that's the insurance company or whether that's private individuals. But I would still like to help. So where I have to charge them, I like to go above and beyond my job. I like to try and give them a little bit more extra guidance without charging them that little bit extra. And the fact that that element of my role goes such a long way with them, that not only is the appreciativeness there, but the fact that they are fully aware, they can then come to me and they know I'm going to be there for them. So being able to help them, sometimes I volunteer a bit too much, because where I do end up having to charge people, sometimes I do go through life thinking, I got in this business to help people and I don't feel like I'm helping, even though I am, but I don't feel like I'm helping because I'm gaining, I'm obviously getting paid a salary, it's my bread and butter, I have to. But then my employees are also gaining because they're earning income from that. But the best thing I would, if I had to pinpoint it, is having the ability to help someone, being a voice for those people who necessarily cannot be that voice. So for example, I have a lot of vulnerable clients. I mean, your daughter-in-law is a GP. So she would appreciate the fact that she will sometimes have people come to her who might not be able to explain what their ailments are in a concise and succinct way. So she might go the extra mile to understand their situation a little bit more. She might speak to them in a language that they understand, or she might ask some questions that are not usually asked on the questionnaire, or however she does her daily life. And they will appreciate that. That goes a long way. So it's having that voice for them. So I do get a lot of vulnerable clients. I get a lot of cases. At the moment, I have a lot of employment cases where my clients have suffered discrimination, some of them on the highest level, and are mentally and physically impaired as a result of that discrimination. So when they write to me, sometimes they write to me as if they're texting me. So I literally get 2 words in one email. 4 seconds later, I'll get another email. And it's being able to manage that and then putting those emails together in a concise format to then put to the other side. And lastly, the question that this person has asked, which I now know who it is: what inspired you to become a biker chick? Brilliant. Okay, so I do class myself as Desi Z, biker chick. Desi, meaning we say Desi to those who are typical, who are Indian, who are Asians. And I am anything but Desi Z, right? That's what I say. I'm anything but typical. Now, what inspired me to become a biker chick? I honestly don't know if I had to really, really narrow it down. I've always had a love of motorbikes. From when I was a really, really young child, I used to stand outside my parents' house on the main road and see these bikes go past, which was very far and few between, especially up north. I always used to be fascinated by them. As I grew up, of course, you become older. These childhood dreams of yours tend to fly away or ride away, shall we say. So I kind of gave up on thinking about biking. When I went to college up north, one of my close friends in college, her uncle had a motorbike, and when I went down to her house, she opened the shed door and she goes to me, "Don't worry, Uncle Mick won't say anything." So, I sat on his Harley, and the love of those bikes came back again. But again, I pushed it to one side. Being female, Muslim, Asian, and so on, I didn't really think about it that much. But then when I went India, 13 times out of a 12-year first marriage, I always sat on the back of motorbikes. Now, motorbikes in India, Afghanistan, Pakistan, as I mentioned on my shows before, are very common. Over there, people don't think twice, they don't blink twice, they don't even look back twice when they see Muslim females riding mopeds or motorbikes. It's the norm. Unfortunately, in the UK, we don't have that. So again, it was getting that pushback that it's not the norm for us. But when I then divorced the first time round, And it was just me and my kids living slightly away from the usual area in Evington. I wanted to do something for myself. And I decided, well, I'm not really into sports. I used to be. I no longer was. So I randomly decided one day, let's see if I could do it. I'm quite sure there was quite a lot of conversation around that short people don't tend to ride motorbikes. So I thought, let me do this. Let me see if I can challenge myself and get myself on a motorbike. And indeed, I actually couldn't do it. I kept dropping that bike. And my trainers kept saying to me, you can do it. We've had shorter people. It was myself that felt I could not. So that then became my challenge. Why am I stopping myself? Who am I to say no to myself? Why can't I do it? So what really inspired me, now that I'm thinking about it in hindsight, reading your question out loud and answering it, is the fact that I challenge myself. Who am I to say no to myself? Why can't I do it? Why am I stopping myself? And it was that became my inspiration. And 10 years on, I ride a motorbike, alhamdulillah. So those questions were all from Sophia Kara. Sophie, Jazakillah so much. I am too your number one fan. And I hope I've answered all of your questions. Okay, so we are going to move on. Jazakillah, Sophie and family. We have another question that's come in. Before I answer that question, just a quick reminder to everyone, you have tuned in to Ramadan Radio on 87.7 FM, DAB 9B, with your host and presenter, Zainab Zaeem. We are back with the first day of Ramadan 2024 for majority of the people, and some people will be doing their first rosa tomorrow. For those who need a reminder as to what our studio number is, listen in. Brilliant. So just a little bit more housekeeping there. So we've had 3 more questions come in. So this is from Uzma, and because the name's written as Uzma, not Uzi, I know it's one of my other friends. So Jazakillah so much, Uzma, for sending these questions in. It says, I know we make New Year's resolutions. Are there any physical or spiritual goals you wish to carry out during Ramadan? Okay, interesting. Are there any physical or spiritual goals? I tend not to make New Year resolutions because I'm one of those people that life always gets in the way. I don't tend to make plans because the way my life has always panned out, my plans always change. Sometimes they change because I change them. Majority of the time it's because something's out of my control. But every Ramadan, I do always, cliche, I always make dua to Allah to give me more hidayah, to give me more tandrusti, to allow me to become more of a spiritual person, in the sense that I pray a little bit more, whether that's continuing to pray my 5 times namaz, whether that's waking up to pray tahajjud, whether that's praying Yasin Sharif on a daily basis, whatever it is, I always make dua that I can pray a little bit more. That's always my spiritual goal. But also, excuse me, to know enough about Islam that I can make that distinction between worldly requirements to that of what Islam says we should and shouldn't do. So that, what I would say, would be my main spiritual goals. Bear with me one moment. Sorry, talking continuously does put a strain on one's throat. Okay, so how do I plan to carry them out? Okay, so I made the resolution. My resolution is to try and pray as much as I can and to know enough about Islam. So I have the internet that's available to me. I have quite a few spiritual books that I can read. So putting aside some of my legal textbooks that I tend to read on a daily basis, I'll now pick up the spiritual textbook and trying to read maybe a page or 2 on a daily basis. That will then allow me to finish the whole book maybe in a month's time or 2 months' time, and then continuing that for the rest of the year. In terms of praying more, well, it helps the fact that currently it's Ramadan, so that everyone around me, everyone surrounding me is more or tends to be more spiritual. We'd like that to continue after Ramadan, but it tends to happen in Ramadan, and I can't shy away from that. So it helps that everyone around me is praying, so that allows me to do my ghusl, get the Quran Sharif, sit down and pray. It allows me to finish work a little bit earlier. My employers are really generous in that sense and flexible, that if I didn't want to take my lunch because I don't need to, then I can finish a little bit earlier, which then allows me to come home sooner, sit down and pray namaz, sit down and pray my Quran Sharif, whether that's praying, the Quran Sharif's Sipara 1, 2 and so on, or whether that's praying any particular Surat Sipara, as we say. What is the best decade of my life and why? I love this question. What's the best decade of my life and why? Well, I'd like to say the best decade of my life would have been when I was a baby. And the reason why is because I'm pretty sure I had a lot of fun without any worries of paying the bills and, growing up and having to take care of life and, family and so on. But then I don't remember anything. I don't remember anything about being a baby. I don't remember my parents, lifting me up and playing with me and so on. I would say the best decade of my life, I've got something that I hold on to for every decade of my life. So primary school, my friends, having fun with them. High school, we've got some amazing memories of when we were in high school and so on, college, uni. I would say the best decade would be the decades, the years that I'm spending with my children. There's always something new happening. There's always some drama. My twins, I'm pretty sure my identical boys at some time or another have swapped themselves with me, especially during COVID when we had to wear the masks and I couldn't tell them apart, especially with their voices. Having that little bit of banter with them, but also serious enough to, crack on with life, but also being surrounded by friends and family. As some of my listeners and viewers, my fans are fully aware, I've had a few challenges in my life. Well, few is an understatement, shall we say. And I'm constantly breaking stereotypes and I'm constantly having challenges and obstacles throughout my life. Fine, so be it. Those are the best times because I know, alhamdulillah, no matter what I go through, Allah does not give me that which He knows I cannot handle. And yeah, okay, I throw my toys at the pram and have a little bit of a hissy fit and so on. But once I've done all of that, I then get up and crack on and do what I need to do. So Jazakallah Usman, I hope I've answered your questions. And if I haven't, then you've got my number. Message me and tell me off if you need to. Okay, so the next one. This is from Mizbah. And this would be my Mizzy, as I call her. Zainab, being such an inspiration yourself to so many out there, I wanted to ask you, who is your hero, your role model? Wow. Such a thought-provoking question. While I think about the answer, I'm going to put on the housekeeping, which is the studio line so that people can call in or text in. So far, we've had 0 callers. My producer can let me know if that's correct. So if there are any callers in there, come on, where are you, everyone? This is your chance to interview Zainab Zaeem of Breaking Stereotypes. Call in, ask me that question, let me answer it. Brilliant. So, question from Mizbah. Zainab, being such an inspiration yourself to so many out there, I wanted to ask you, who is your hero? Who is your role model? Okay. My role model and my hero, when I actually think about it, looking past my life, I never really had someone in my life that I could aspire to look towards. I did have, of course, I had my mother, my grandmother, my auntie. I have one of my favorite aunties, Shirin Masi, who I once actually did get told off by her brother by calling her my favorite Masi. She was someone who I really looked up to, especially because she always had my back no matter what. Nowadays, I've got so many people in my life. I've got Sophie, I've got Shirin, I've got Saida, I've got you, Misbah. I've got so many people. If I had to actually narrow it down, I'd say my grandmother. My grandmother, may Allah give her the highest place in Jannatul Firdaus. She passed away when I was 11 years old. So a long time ago, given that I'm 41. But when she was around, she was a glue that kept our family together. You can just tell. I knew it then, I know it now. She was the glue that kept everyone together. She put up with quite a bit that happened in her life. She was still in India when my grandfather, my dad came to England and then called her over years later and so on. And having to raise young children, you know, she did a lot. And that takes a lot of strength, a lot of tenacity from someone who's not educated, who has little means and little resources. And if my grandmother can do it, and that goes to majority of our parents and grandparents and those from back home, shall we say, from India, Pakistan, Africa, and so on. You know, so many of those ladies have had to endure so much with so many little resources. They didn't have books on how to have children, how to do parenting, or, you know, how to cook dishes. They had to learn on the spot. And they had to manage their husband, their in-laws, raising their children, sometimes even educating their children. And if they could do it, why could we not? So if I had to say who my hero, my role model was, definitely my grandma. And I hope I've made her proud. I have a feeling that if she was here now, she'd love the fact that I was riding a motorbike. She'd love the fact that I was a solicitor. She'd probably question it. She'd probably doubt my abilities, but only because she knows that I could probably accomplish a lot more. And in fact, my nanima, which is my mum's mother, who is my Shirin Masi's Masi auntie as well, she actually once said to me that, I love the fact that you're a lawyer, but lawyers are liars. Because that's what she's been brought up with in abroad. There was that corruption that went on for a very long time. And I had to sit there and have a conversation about my career and the fact that actually there's a code of conduct that all lawyers in UK have to adhere to. Yes, of course, there's always going to be that one anomaly who will, you know, might stray away, but that's not all of us, so don't paint us with the same paintbrush. And she sat there and she listened, and captivating my nanny in such a conversation really warmed my heart. And I do remember missing my daddy, my father's mother at that point. I wish I could have that conversation with her. So Jazakillah Misbah for your question. I hope I've answered it. Moving on to, oh look, it's one of my favorite Masis, Shirin. Shirin Masi, her question is, and this is what I mean, everyone, about the support. You need support from your family, from your friends. Without their support, sometimes it can be quite difficult. So Shirin Masi wants to know, how often do I go for a bike ride? And what's the furthest that I've been? Were you scared at any point? Okay, so I'm going to answer, were you scared at any point? I'm scared every single time I take my motorbike out. As many of you already know, I don't shy away from it. I'm quite short. Bikes are very heavy. My bike in particular, Honda Rebel 1100, is very, very heavy. So maneuvering it can be quite difficult. I've dropped my past bikes. Touch wood, alhamdulillah, I've not dropped this bike. So I'm always scared when I'm moving it around and whatever, but I'm also scared every time I get on the road. Bike is a scary thing, no shadow of a doubt. There's no cage that supports us. We're exposed to all of the elements, and we have to place trust in someone that we don't know on the road. We have to place trust on another driver, on a pedestrian. And we don't know whether a driver is actually paying attention on the road. We don't know if that driver has even seen us, even if we're revving our bikes, even if we're right in front of them. So having that trust in another driver is always going to be a scary point. But I have faith in my abilities. I've dropped my bike, I've crashed my bike, but I always get back on, injuries permitting. There have been times where I have become bedridden, not been able to walk for a few months and so on. And that has hindered my job. I did lose the opportunity to have a training contract back in 2018 when I dropped my bike and so on. But like I said earlier, I have faith in Allah. What He gives me, He knows I can handle. And I know that if that chapter is going to close for me, then another chapter will open. I might not like it, but I know that there's something better written for me. I try and go as often as I can, specifically in the summer, good weather. I'm not a fair weather rider. I do ride in the rain. In fact, my producer for Ramadan Radio had me riding my motorbike on Saturday. It was very chilly, I have to admit, very, very chilly. But I have the bike gear, heated gloves and so on. The furthest I've been is Wales. So in 2016, when I passed my motorbike test, my big bike test, my current ex-husband, so my husband at the time, decided to do a weekend away in Wales on a motorbike for bank holiday. And I literally just passed. It'd only been 2 or 3 days. And I think that was the most scared I'd ever been, getting on that bike and going all the way to Wales on a bike that was huge. We'd shortened it as much as we could have, but I did it, and once I'd got over that initial fear, will I not? Alhamdulillah, the ride was just amazing. And, exploring a new town, a new area, and being able to ride into Wales on a bike, open air, and having a look around and just looking at the wonders of what Allah has created, and just looking at the natural environment created by Allah. It was just phenomenal. It was beautiful. So Jazakallah Shari Masi for your question. So next question is, what inspired you to pursue your current profession? My name is Khan. Brilliant. I like that. I don't know if that is a male or female, but Jazakallah so much for sending in your question. What inspired me to pursue my current profession? I'm really glad that this question's been asked, because this takes me back to something that I found a couple of weeks ago. So I went up north a few months ago. It's been a while since I've gone to see my parents, and I know my parents aren't listening in, but if my family members are listening in, I do apologize. I will make my way down to Bolton soon. But I came across my work experience documents, and my work experience documents basically said that I wanted to be a journalist when I was growing up. So I must have been, 14, 15? When I filled this document in, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be a writer. And I do remember that. But I also remember I wanted to be a pilot, and then I wanted to be an air hostess. So there was a few areas that I wanted to go in. I hadn't made up my mind. When it came to actually choosing my work experience, I did mine at the magistrates court, believe it or not. I did 4 days in the magistrates, and I did 1 day in Crown Court, right? But I then went down a completely different path. I left Bolton when I was 17, came to Leicester, went to college, didn't do so great in my A-levels. In fact, I have a C and a D and 2 Fs, believe it or not, and I don't have an undergraduate's degree. Nope, I have no undergraduate's degree, and I'm actually proud of that with everything that I've accomplished. Alhamdulillah, I'm blessed. I actually fell into my current profession, believe it or not. The inspiration, it wasn't so much as an inspiration as it was another challenge. So I started working in a factory when I was in my early 20s. I then ended up owning my own packing textile factory. Yes, your typical Asian, stereotypical factory, as everyone says. And what I did with that was, not only was I running that business, but I was also doing my first ex-husband's immigration case, his asylum case, because the Home Office unfortunately had lost all of his paperwork and they were pushing back quite hard, and solicitors were, it was very, very expensive and so on. So I started doing his immigration case. Then I started doing my staff member's immigration case, and I kind of fell into it. I found I was really good at it. And we had an MVQ assessor come into the unit, and he, as a joke, said to me, "Why don't you go back to law?" And I said, "No chance. I'm not going back to uni at all to do a 3-year law degree when I've got 4 children in tow." My youngest at that point, who's now 15, was only 18 months old. So he told me about the postgraduate diploma in law. Now, the postgraduate diploma in law, if for those who don't know, is an accelerated course. You do 3 years of a law degree in 9 months. For someone who's never gone to university before, has never done a 3-year stint at uni, that was quite daunting. But I went ahead and I applied. Complete different challenges, too much for me to explain. But then I did that law degree. I got a pass. I didn't do brilliantly because I'm not academically bright. But when it came on to the legal practice course, I did really well. I got a merit, and alhamdulillah, I did extremely well. But then came all the other challenges. I couldn't get a training contract, couldn't get a paralegal role, and so on and so forth. So the challenge then was, why can't I do it? Why can't I become a lawyer? Who's stopping me? And that then became my challenge. So that was then my inspiration. And it was those challenges that made me persevere and gave me that passion to continue and become that solicitor. So I hope Mr. Khan, Ms. Khan, apologies. I hope I've answered your question. We are very fast running out of time. I'm actually quite shocked. Jazakallah everyone who sent your questions in. I was a bit nervous that nobody would send anything in. The next question, what would you say your greatest challenge was while studying? Nazneen, Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum, Nazneen. What would I say is my greatest challenge while studying? Everything. Everything was a challenge. As I've just mentioned, I was not academically bright. I did not know how my revision was going to go. And very quickly I learned what my strengths and weaknesses were. And my kids were quite young. So my daughter was she was 18 months old. I had to put her in pre-care. My kids were in primary school. My eldest was in India studying for his hifz. So there was a lot of challenges, but at the same time, I also had the business. Although I no longer owned the business, I was still setting the new owner up. So I was still having to do that. So everything was a challenge. But all of it made me a better person, made me who I am today. And I'm just grateful that Allah Ta'ala gave me the capacity, because without him giving me the ability and the capacity to do it, I would not be able to do so. So I'm grateful for that. I hope, Nazneen, I've answered your question. Very quickly, we have 2 minutes on the clock, so I'm going to quickly go through this. Feiruz, as a law student myself who is juggling religion, uni, hobbies, work, and life in general, what is your advice on balancing multiple things and shifting from one industry to a law industry? For example, how you shifted from business to law. I think I have majority of the time answered this question with all the other responses, but it is about having faith in yourself, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, having the capacity, so whether that's support from family, friends, having the ability, the resources available. So for example, if you're shifting from business to law, do you have the funds to embark on that law career, or do you have support from your family to fund you to do that law career? Would you need to work? If you do need to work, is that something that you could do part-time, or would you need to do it full-time? Would your studies need to be part-time? It's knowing everything. So first of all, you have to know the pros and cons of everything. So my advice would be knowing the pros and cons of every industry that you're shifting from, whether that's the current industry you're in to the new industry that you're going to, knowing what resources you're going to have access to, plugging the gap into what resources you don't have and how you can grab that resource, knowing whether or not you've got that ability, so whether that's your strength, weakness, support, and so on. So Feiruz, I know I've gone through that really, really quickly. If you wanted to reach out to me, please do reach out to me on Ramadan Radio, on Facebook. I will then message you back, or anyone who wants to connect to me on LinkedIn can do so on Zainab Zaeem, and I'm happy to continue this narrative forward. We have 10 seconds on the clock. I want to say huge Jazakallah and lots of love to everyone who sent those questions in and to everyone who's listened. Ramadan Radio, Breaking Stereotypes.